It is my honor to introduce you to our keynote presenter before we have our panel discussion. But she will be sharing some insights both about the Japanese and American perspectives on sustainability initiatives. But Dr. Eddie Saikawa, or Saikawa Sensei, is an associate professor at Emory University. She conducts interdisciplinary research on the environment, and she has worked on diverse projects that cover atmospheric chemistry, environmental health, geochemistry, climate science, and even environmental policy and politics as well. So she's a lot smarter than I am, but ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, let's welcome Dr. Eddie Saikawa.
Okay, let's make sure this works. You're going to see. Okay. You're going to see my picture. Yes, I didn't want to show, but there you go. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much to Yoshi-san for inviting me. And I'm so honored to be here today. I know that you have a great lunch in front of you, so am I okay to say that you can eat, or? Please enjoy the lunch while I talk. Okay, so as Yoshi-san mentioned, I am at Emory. And today I've been thinking what I wanted to talk to you all. I thought that I wanted to talk about sustainability, obviously, and how you all think about sustainability, how I think about sustainability. And for me, the three things that I listed here, plastics, climate-smart agriculture, and soil lead contamination, from my research topics, I hope that there's something that you will get out of this talk today. So what do you think about sustainability? What comes to your mind when you hear the word sustainability? I've always been interested in the environment, and for me, sustainability was really about the environment. But I think it's really important that we think about the three pillars that's included in sustainability, and that's economic development, social progress, and the environmental responsibility. So it's not just one, it's not just about the environment, it's about the economy, and also about social progress too. Us to think about how can we get to the world where we all can thrive, not just environmentally, but socially and economically as well. So for me, I started off thinking about sustainability, about air pollution, thinking about how can we mitigate air pollution. And that's because this is really a silent killer. And we can get to blue sky days if we did something about it. So it's not just about scientists. Scientists weren't able to convey this well. It was a photographer. So how can we actually communicate the issue? I think it was so important. It's so important thinking about this complex issue of sustainability. But what I also realized is that air pollution is not just about ambient air. It's also about household air pollution. So this is the picture that we took in Tibet. People are burning yak dung in their homes. I'm sorry you're eating. But because of this, you can't really get polluted air inside. And you are actually in the household or indoor environment so many more hours than you are outdoors. And who cooks? It's women and kids. So it's all about gender as well. It's all about who is being exposed. So thinking about sustainability, the social aspect, and also economic aspect also plays a role. Why are they burning yak dung? It's economic reasons. And if we are having people killed because of that, I don't think that's right. And 3 billion people are using these solid fuels for cooking and heating. And I also want to bring up the issue of garbage burning. This is just a lack of infrastructure. If we had the infrastructure, we are able to prevent that. But because we don't, people end up burning garbage on their roads or in their backyard. This is from Nepal, taken by my friend Aniko Pandey. And you might think this is only in the global south. I've been doing a lot of work in Nepal and India. And we wanted to find out how much garbage burning might be killing people. And this is some simulations that done. You don't really have to, I'm not going to go over the figure itself, but what we found was that this can increase air pollution, garbage burning, and it might be increasing by 30%. And that leads to 300,000 premature mortality in India and in Nepal, just because of garbage burning. To me, that's a very big number, and we are only talking about the small particles, particulate matter. And then I also have this project in Guatemala as well, and they are burning a lot of plastics in their homes. And it is really toxic, the gases, the toxic gases that come out, and then the small particles that come out. And also there is CO2 emissions, carbon dioxide, that's related to climate change as well. So it's all those different chemicals that come out. And we are finding that maybe 24% of these particulate matter, PM2.5, might be coming because of plastic burning. And small, but 2% of CO2 emissions might be from this plastic burning. So I've been talking a lot about global south. But it's not just in these developing countries. There's this very interesting study that came out from a colleague of mine in the University of Iowa. They are finding that plastic burning is also happening in the US as well. And so tetraphenylbenzene, that's TPB, that is a biomarker for plastic burning. Dhaka in Bangladesh, you're seeing very high concentrations of that. But you are also seeing here in Atlanta, we are finding that concentrations too. And this really worries me because now, what do we do with plastics? We use plastics so much, and we are not really able to recycle them very well. And now Biden administration is also trying to think about different ways to use plastics. And in South Fulton, very close to here, there is a potential construction of a facility to turn plastic waste into energy. I think that is a very, very big concern, and we have to be worried about what that might mean for people, especially for the vulnerable communities that often get exposed to these problems. And since we're talking about US and Japan, I wanted to raise this issue about how Japan and the US are both very big exporters of plastic waste. We have to do something because we cannot just be exporting these to different countries. I think it's very important that we take the responsibility to do something about it. Now there is this high ambient coalition to end plastic pollution. But the countries that are highlighted in black, they are not a part of it. The US, Japan, they are not a part of this coalition. Can we do something so that more countries can work together to end this plastic pollution? So I've mentioned a little bit already, but globally, only 9% of plastic is actually recycled. And 22% is considered mismanaged. And the black is landfill in this graph. So you can see there's so many countries that are just landfilling the plastics. And the blue is incineration. So if you don't have a good enough facility, you are going to get very toxic gases, and that can get into the particles as well. So I've been talking quite a bit about plastics, but the summary from this is that garbage burning and plastic burning, I want you to think about how important that can be a source for air pollution and also for climate change. Briefly mentioned carbon dioxide. So if we can do a lot if we use less plastics and if we were a little bit more careful about the single-use plastics. That comes back to our health as well. So now I want to shift gears a little bit. to talk about climate smart agriculture. Because I feel like we're not talking enough about agriculture, even though that's also very important for both air pollution and climate change. So since we're at the bank, maybe we should talk a little bit about the economic impact. I didn't mention about the economic impact for air pollution because that's to me, very unethical. How are you going to decide how the dollar signs for people's life? And we get people's values very differently in different countries. To me, that's very wrong. But this was already done, so I can just put this out there. So this is for an EU study. They're saying 300 billion euros to 900 billion euros for air pollution related economic impact. 400,000 plus premature death in the EU. I've been talking a lot about particulate matter, and I guess I shouldn't be going into the details, but agriculture emits a lot of pollutants that lead to the particles that we talked about, and then there's also ozone that gets created in the atmosphere as well. And that's very important because agriculture gets impacted by air pollution too. If we have a lot of air pollution, that reduces the yield. And so it's all a circle. Anyway, it's also very important for climate too. We talked a lot about CO2. I'm sure you talk a lot about carbon dioxide. I also want you to remember methane and nitrous oxide that we don't really hear a lot about. Methane comes out a lot from agriculture, and so does nitrous oxide. Nitrous oxide is N2O. That's different from nitrogen oxides, NOx that you hear about. NOx comes from cars, that's an air pollutant. N2O is a greenhouse gas, it's not an air pollutant, it's very inert. But N2O is actually destroying the stratospheric ozone as well. And so that's causing another problem, as well as climate change. But you can see that agriculture plays a quite big role in terms of a source of greenhouse gases. So agriculture is here, about 15%. That's contributing to climate change. If we can do something about it, I think that's pretty big. It's actually bigger than transportation. We talk so much about transportation. Why don't we talk more about agriculture? So carbon dioxide, as most of you are aware, it's increasing. The concentrations are increasing rapidly. This is from Hawaii. And I think this NASA figure does a very good job of how it was very low for a very long time, for centuries, and then the current level is really high. But the most important thing about climate change is not the absolute number, because we have seen the absolute high concentration level way back in the past. But the rate of increase is what we have never seen. And because of this high rate, we're not able to adapt so quickly. Maybe humans can, but animals probably cannot. I think that's very important. And I talked about methane. Methane was pretty stable, but then now it's going up. And this is very concerning because methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. It's much short-lived than carbon dioxide. So if we can do something about it, we will see the impact right away. And that's very important too. Nitrous oxide, you see how it's increasing so rapidly, and we are not doing anything about it. Why is that? Why are we not doing anything? This is also a very long-lived greenhouse gas. It's also destroying stratospheric ozone. But there's also a lot of natural component, and that's why it makes it very difficult to regulate nitrous oxide. And one of the reasons why it's increasing so much is because of the nitrogen fertilizer use. The nitrogen fertilizer being applied to the agricultural field has increased so much, as you see from this figure, and that's increasing the N2O concentrations. This is the global nitrogen consumption rate. This is in East Asia, and this that you see here is South Asia. So Asian countries are really increasing the nitrogen fertilizer consumption. And if we look at which crops use a lot of nitrogen fertilizer, this is maize or corn, and this is rice. So to me, this is something that US and Japan can do a lot as well. So what I've been very interested in is what's called climate smart agriculture. The definition is listed here. Sustainably increase agricultural productivity and incomes. We also want to be able to adapt and build resilience to climate change, and then reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And I think what's very important is that we usually only talk about carbon. But as I mentioned, in agriculture, we also have methane and nitrous oxide. We cannot just think about carbon and CO2. We also need to think about other gases too. So that's why I'm trying to see the comprehensive picture. And also ammonia comes out from agriculture too. That's an air pollutant. So there is a really big opportunity for us in agriculture to reduce both climate change and air pollution. So I'm just going to go talk a little bit about the experiment that we've been having. It's called living mulch system. Instead of putting fertilizer, can we use clover as a natural fertilizer? So we would grow white clover over winter, and then we grow corn together so that we don't need to put fertilizer. And this works in Georgia because we have a mild winter that does not kill white clover. So it wouldn't work in, Hokkaido or somewhere very cold, right? But we've been comparing with different techniques. So this is what is usually done in the US, just bare soil and putting a lot of fertilizer onto the land. And this is this living mulch system with the white clover. And these two are having different cover crops. Cover crops are becoming popular. So you put cereal rye first in the winter and you kill them, and then you put corn or maize. So that for cereal rye, you get more carbon into the soil. For crimson clover, it's a different type of clover, so you can also get nitrogen and carbon in the soil before you grow corn. And what we've been trying to do is, does this change the soil? And I think the picture shows pretty clearly, I hope, that this looks very different from other soil, right? So this is the living mulch system, and you're actually able to absorb water much better. You're able to keep the water, and you have much more carbon, and because you have nitrogen, you didn't need to put so much fertilizer either. So we are trying to understand, is this really working as a whole system? And we use the term called net carbon equivalence. So N2O is not a carbon dioxide, but we can quantify how much does it mean as if it was carbon dioxide. And we're using fertilizer for different techniques. How much energy does it use to produce fertilizer? It's very energy intensive. So if you're able to reduce the use of fertilizer, or if you're able to use the less herbicide, that can lead to much less CO2 emissions. But you can see that from our work, living mulch is not the best, right? So we thought it would be much smaller in terms of net carbon. It wasn't. But then we also realized that we are taking into account the clover respiration that we shouldn't have. And so if we took that away, we could actually have a little bit lower compared to other techniques. This is still pretty primitive, but what I'm trying to say is that maybe we should be thinking a little bit more about ways we grow food, and if we can have these climate smart solutions in agriculture for getting to the Paris Agreement goals, to reach 2 degrees Celsius increase compared to the pre-industrial levels. Since I started talking about food, I also want to think a little bit more about hunger and the food desert. The food desert definition is you don't have a car and you don't have a supermarket within a mile. In the southeast US where we are, it's very prevalent. And so if you don't have a car, usually you go to gas station to get food, and you get junk food, no nutritious food. That's that's really not good. And so the city of Atlanta was actually trying to improve urban agriculture. And that's a great idea. There's a lot of community gardens. COVID has helped a lot. But what did we find? We found there's so much lead in the soil. So if you actually grew food in the soil, that's not going to be good for you. And there's no regulation to test the soil for food before you grow food. This is not very smart, I think. But we were able to find high lead levels in where the city was trying to lease the land for urban agriculture. And because of that, we partnered with a community organization called Historic Westside Gardens, and we were able to take more samples in the area. 3 out of the residential sites, out of the 11 residential sites, had 400 ppm of lead or more. So these are these 3 areas. And one of them was a children's garden. And there were children that were growing food in that garden without knowing that there was so much lead. And so when we informed the resident of this lot, she was asking me if their grandkids are having developmental issues because they were working in this garden. They thought it was a great thing to have a home garden, right? It's so complex. And this is very unfortunate too, in my opinion. 400 ppm is so high. They are trying to change that level right now at the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. 75 ppm is the current state gardening screening level. At that time, sorry, it was in 2016. Now Georgia bumped it up. It's 275 ppm. I do not know why. But there's really no good level for screening. And you can see that most of the areas that we tested, these are the community gardens that we tested, 5 of them. And almost all the residential homes were higher than 75 ppm of lead. So this is very common, especially in an industrial area like Atlanta. And the reason why there is so much lead in this west side, where I'm going to show you in a bit, is because of the dumping of this waste called slag. This is an industrial waste coming from smelting. And we found out, thank you to the community gardeners that we've worked with, Rosario Hernandez brought this slag piece saying, maybe this is why we're finding a lot of lead. And that was why. So now it became a Superfund site. Superfund site is where the federal government comes in to clean up. And it is now listed as a national priorities list. And so we are seeing a lot of cleanup from there. This is a low-income area. So this is the area where we found the Superfund site. So you can see the color of this is the median household income. The lighter the color, the lower the household income. The bubbles are how much proportion of children are tested for blood lead. Only about 25% of the people are tested for blood lead levels. That's very low. The color is the proportion of kids that have higher than 5 micrograms per deciliter of lead. 5 micrograms per deciliter used to be the CDC threshold level. Now they lowered it to 3.5. The highest level we saw in this 30303 zip code, 13% of the kids had higher than 5 micrograms per deciliter. And we are not testing enough, and we are not promoting to test the soil either. So even though there was a ban for paint lead, we are still seeing quite a bit of paint lead as well. The leaded gasoline is gone, but the soil is not being tested, and the kids in this neighborhood are being exposed. So I want to just bring it back to Sustainable Development Goals. We talked about poverty. Poverty is so important, but when we try to reduce hunger, we also need to be careful that we are actually providing healthy food. And education is so important, because without knowing about it, we cannot act. I mentioned about gender in terms of the household air quality. Reducing inequality in Atlanta. I hope that I was able to illustrate that from the soil contamination story. So I've been focusing a lot on this healthy human and social systems area. We do need sustainable cities, and we do need responsible consumption, especially for plastics. I'm sure Bill is going to be able to talk a lot about clean water. I'm not going to touch there. But the area in the west side is also an energy burdened community. You're paying more than 6% of your income for energy, and that's not right. You are leaving so few resources for your food, for your healthcare. We need more affordable energy. Okay, I think I should be going, but the main point I want to raise here is that I think we really need stronger partnerships. The academia has been a very big ivory tower. That's bad. But I think we do need a better collaboration among governments, NGOs, corporations, and academia together so that we can bring different expertise. This is so complex. One discipline cannot do it all. One industry cannot do it all. So these are my summary points. I hope that this is going to be a starting point for stronger partnerships amongst all of us together to solve this very, very complex issue that does not have one single solution. And I just wanted to advertise, we are trying to have this energy justice conference, and I would love if your employees, like youth, younger employees, would be interested in joining us. We're hoping to have the people from all over the world. We already have about 70 folks that apply from different countries. I would love to have people from Japan as well, and I would be very excited if you could help advertise for us. So finally, acknowledgements. Thank you to all the collaborators. I don't know if we have time for questions. I went over a little bit, sorry. But thank you so much for